Wine in Mexico, introduced here long ago when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, only became in vogue as recently as the 1980s with Mexico's middle class. Today, upwards of 100 private wineries dominate the landscape along what's called the wine route, or Ruta del Vino,
Hola.
here in Mexico's Valle de Guadalupe in the northern state of Baja, which lies 70 miles south of San Diego, California, and just northeast of Ensenada's Pacific coast. Many now referring to Valle Guadalupe as Napa Valley South. Winemakers here producing some of the most sought-after wines in the world. Enjoyed by thousands of wine lovers attending this giant wine tasting party in the valley each year, known as Vendimia, celebrating the grape harvest. It's here where CCTV finds winemakers Phil and Eileen Gregory, two of the most adventurously eccentric wine producers in Baja. Wine connoisseurs the world over make an annual pilgrimage to visit Phil and Eileen's winery. That entails driving down a dirt road off the main highway seemingly in the middle of nowhere, following signs to La Villa del Valle, Phil and Eileen's Mediterranean-style luxury bed and breakfast, a resort and spa that has become a popular and relaxing weekend getaway. The main attraction here for most, of course, rests below in their vineyard, the very cool-looking Vinacava winery, constructed from a set of old boats that is truly one of the most unique wineries in the world. How all of this evolved is really quite magical, says Eileen as she gives me a tour of their estate.
Phil and I met many years ago in the West Indies on sailing boats. He was a captain and I was basically just on holiday. Both of us from England, although we didn't know each other in England. But we met in an island that was owned by Guadalupe, which is kind of funny that we wound up here in the Guadalupe Valley all those years later. So it's very appropriate and not a coincidence that the winery is constructed using boats, which is kind of an homage to how we actually met.
4 years ago, we decided to build our own winery.
Phil Gregory is quick to give credit for Vinacava's unique design to his equally eccentric friend and noted Mexican architect Alejandro de Acosta, seen here recently at the wine festival, a proud Mexican drinking beer, naturally, but from a wine glass. De Acosta is known as a master designer in the art of using recycled materials for his creations, a design that captured the vision of Phil Gregory almost immediately.
Basically, I simply said that I wanted something functional and funky, and I certainly got that.
Phil shows CCTV the different phases of construction. Abandoned boats trucked here from the Pacific coast, then ever so carefully rotated upside down by a crane, then set down over holes dug into the ground. Watching this risky and slightly dangerous undertaking made Captain Phil feel a bit like a man overboard at times, he says.
When this was happening, I was hiding behind my house like this, looking sort of in fear. I thought the whole thing was going to crash. These are huge boats he's lifting.
From the outside, Phil shows me how the winery looks when visitors walk in the front entrance. It's like entering a cave, dark and cool inside. And above us, one of the enormous boats turned upside down for the roof.
I make 30,000 bottles of wine a year maximum. I don't want to make more because I'm very involved physically in the process, and that's quite a lot for me. I like to make the wine in very small quantities that I blend together after a year or a year and a half. It's very time consuming.
Guests here appreciating it all in a peaceful setting that Phil and Eileen simply call a piece of heaven that seems perfectly placed here in the middle of nowhere.
We fell in love with the place when we first saw it. It was so unspoiled, and although it's very close to the American border, it's nothing like America at all. It's really, for us, it was like a rip in the fabric of time.
A trip to Vinacava, they say, very much like a trip to old Mexico, as one explores the area around here. The real head-turner being Phil's funky winery of old boats.